creates prosperity and upward mobility, but they think that it just leaves too many people behind. And so therefore, they view a more ideal setting, a government that has more power to even the playing field and ensure that we all have a certain minimum. Now look, I wish that that worked. Sometimes I wish that that was the best approach, because it's easier to pass a law or create a government agency than it is to start a business. But the problem is it doesn't work. That's not a new idea. This idea that somehow government can create equality of results is not new. It's not creative. It's been tried over and over again all over the world. And it's always failed. In the end, it has always failed to achieve what it strives to achieve. It has never worked before, and it's not going to work now. And yet there are people that adhere to that thought process in American politics. The idea that through more government, we can generate a better economy for our people. It doesn't work. It never has. And sometimes folks like that get elected, and they take power, whether it's in a governor's mansion, in the White House, or in Congress. Now, notice they never run on that platform. They never run admitting this what they believe, because they know the American people don't agree with them. But that's what they do believe in. And so this election, we have an extraordinary nominee, by the way. Mitt Romney is an extraordinary person. Kelly just described how her husband and herself met with him and looked into his eyes and asked him tough questions. I hope some of you, well, you're in New Hampshire, you've all met the candidate. At least 6 or 7 times. And so you've come across a person that is just a quality human being. His number one job, his most important job in the world, is husband and father. He's done a great job. Then, you look at how he's been a leader in his church, in his communities. I mean, everywhere he's ever been, he has served. In every aspect of his life, you look at Mitt Romney and say, that's what I want my sons to grow up and be like. So he's an extraordinary person, and we're blessed to have him running for office as the nominee of our party. But this election is about more than just that. It's literally a choice between two very different views of what government's role should be. Two very different directions. And I don't think I need to convince you, because I'm preaching to the proverbial choir. But I think it's important to remind ourselves of what's at stake. That if we continue on the road we're on right now, we are going to lose some of the things that make us different. We're going to lose some of the things that make us exceptional. We cannot go down that road. Because if we do and we continue on this path, we're going to become just like everybody else. We'll still be a rich country, we'll still be powerful, we'll still be large and important, but we won't be exceptional. We'll start to lose some of the things that distinguish us from the rest of the world, and the world will be worse off. Because trust me when I tell you, I live in a community surrounded by people that came from somewhere else. The American example is our greatest contribution we've ever given mankind. That doesn't mean our military hasn't done an extraordinary job of providing for liberty for others. It has. That doesn't mean that American trade and American culture hasn't changed the world, because it has. But our example, the fact that no matter where you live on this planet, there is someone like you here who is doing things that you've been told your whole life that people like you can't do. I can't tell you how earth-shattering that is for people. When they can look here and see someone that grew up just like they did, accomplishing here what they can't do in their own country. And they realize that the future can be better, and that they're being held back by something artificial, not something that's built in. So our example is so important for the world, because if our light is extinguished, there's no other light in the world. There's still no country on this planet that can replace us. Certainly not China, where you can't even do a Google search on anything you want. Certainly not Russia, where people are going to jail on trumped-up charges because you dare to speak out against the government. And I promise you, certainly not the United Nations, which oftentimes is a collection of governments that are the lowest common denominator in the world. Where time and again, the United Nations Security Council is a place where good things are blocked by countries that, quite frankly, want to reserve the right to be able to do those kinds of things to their own people one day. And so, what's at stake here is dramatic. Now, we all share our principle. I know that Kelly was elected on principles that she held dear, and so do I. We're never going to abandon our principles. But as policymakers, we have an obligation to solve problems. And from time to time, what that means in our republic, because our Constitution also gave us a system of government, which is a republic, which says you have to serve with people that come from different parts of this country, that have different principles and different ideas, and somehow you're going to have to figure out a way to come together and solve a problem. Otherwise, your debt overwhelms you. Your tax code overwhelms you. Your energy policies overwhelm you. We've got to solve these problems. And the president's had 4 years to figure out a way to bring us together to solve these problems. In fact, his campaign was built on that promise. And I think that today Congress in America is more divided than it's ever been. And the reason is because they have deliberately divided us on occasion. And because more often than not, it appears that they use politics as a way to set up the next election, instead as a way to solve our problems and confront our future. I can tell you that from personal experience, and I'm sure Kelly has stories just like it. I came up, about a year ago, I sat down with a Democratic colleague of mine, and we said, why don't we come up with a bill, a jobs plan, that takes all the ideas in the president's jobs bill and all the ideas in the Republican jobs bill and sees, are there any we have in common? And let's put a bill together of all the ideas that are in both plans, the Republican plan and the president's plan. We came up with a bill of all the things we agree on, good stuff. And we called it the Agree Act. We couldn't even get a hearing. We couldn't get the White House to line up behind it. There's a lot of reasons why they didn't do it. Probably because it went against their narrative of a do-nothing Congress. Probably because they didn't want to get me any credit. It didn't matter. The point is, it got no. If you can't get a vote, if you can't pass a bill that we agree on, where have we gotten in American politics? I can tell you, if Mitt Romney is president of the United States and a bill comes forward with a bunch of ideas that he agrees on and the other side agrees on, he's not just going to sign it, he's going to work for it. He's going to move forward. He's not going to say, oh, I got to worry about my re-election. I don't want Democrats getting any credit. Because he has a history of doing that. He is the only person running for president right now that even has a chance to bring us together. And I think that's so critical moving forward. Because Kelly's right. I don't want to be a part of a generation where we have to turn to our children and explain to them how it was that the America they've inherited is worse off than the one we inherited. I don't want to be part of a generation that has to explain to our kids why we are the first Americans in our history to leave the next generation worse off. I don't want my grandkids, to the extent I can even fathom that, to have to read in the history books about the great American era or the great American century that existed when their grandparents were kids, but no longer the case. And the good news is it doesn't have to be that way. We are literally just a handful of important but simple measures away from setting the groundwork for a new American century. There is no reason why our kids and our grandkids cannot be the safest, most peaceful, and most prosperous Americans ever. If only we do a handful of important things. And that's what this election is about. So I think it's so important, not just for all of you to vote, and I'm pretty confident you're going to, but for each of you to find 3 or 4 people to go with you. We all know people that aren't going to vote unless we get them there. I know in my family, I've taken it upon myself. We have long lines in early voting in Florida right now, and part of what I've been having to figure out how to do is how to convince people to stand in those lines and not leave. We have a 10-page ballot in Florida this year. We're going to win by more than 500 votes. Don't worry. We're not going to do too much. No hanging chads anymore, or anything like that. But we've got to do this. You know, what you don't want to do is wake up on Wednesday morning next week and realize that, you know, Mitt Romney's not going to be president because New Hampshire went the other way by 150 votes. It can happen. It's literally that close. So all of us know people that aren't going to vote unless you get them there, unless you keep them there.